and LinkedIn. If you have any questions, please plop them into the comments section and we will answer them. If you're watching this after the fact, put your questions in there. We will get to them as well. I would like to thank Bitful for their sponsorship. They are Canada's premier cryptocurrency exchange. They've got 4 new digital currencies. Click on their website in the comment section shortly, and they are real people digital currencies. Download their app also on Google Play or the store. I am excited about today's conversation. Neil and I had a great chat before about fishing and hunting and the things that we love to do that are out there right now. But Neil, welcome, the founder of Sawback Technologies.
Thanks for having me on, Jay.
And how's everything rolling today?
So far, so good. We've got a couple conversations coming up right after this to keep the work going on our products. So I'm super pumped about that and just progress every day. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, and that's and that's awesome, and we'll get into that. And I always love talking about how we met, and we met through Startup TNT. You've come out to a few, or at least one Thursday night, and we finally got to meet in person and scheduled to get in here to talk a little bit about where you're going, what you're doing, and you've had quite the circle through the entrepreneurial community. So it's going to be a good story you're going to tell today.
Awesome, looking forward to it.
I'll give a brief introduction here, and then we'll get after it. So Neil spent 23 years working in the manufacturing and automotive sectors after relocating to Calgary in the 1990s in the oil and gas sector. Neil pivoted out of oil and gas and found companies specializing in development of innovative remote sensing technologies for construction and clean tech. He is a board member of a provincial organization and has also co-founded and chaired nonprofits Hunting and Angling Association and advocates for protection and conversion of Alberta's wild habitat. I can't get that word today. In his spare time, he lends his skills to ASET to help contribute to the success in the present and the future. So after now that I can't speak that one word, did all your past influences and learnings help you come up with the idea for Sawback Technologies?
Yep. Basically, the majority of my career has obviously been spent out building things, whether it be for oil and gas or manufacturing or whatever. It's usually involving ground disturbances of some sort. And that basically, it was just one of those things that I kept in the back of my mind. It's like, yeah, like one of the major problems we have is every time we dig something up, we invariably hit something and or damage it. And we're always trying to kind of steer away from damaging. But since I was on the front end, so I was literally the guy who was just saying, yeah, we have problems, or sorry, we have to get, say, cables from point A to point B. Just be super careful when you're digging into things. That's all I really concern myself about. Then after the last oil and gas slowdown in 2016, and I basically found myself with a little bit more time and began thinking, okay, well, what can I do that actually matters? And it was around this time that I was starting to really heavily get into the conservation scene, which is essentially just to make sure that my kids have something to do after I'm gone off the earth. Just make sure that they can go out and enjoy the mountains or enjoy the forest and stuff like that before it gets too disrupted from industrialization or human disturbance. And then I began thinking a little bit further. It's like, well, hang on. I kind of like playing with drones because at the time it was the new and exciting technology. And then I began figuring out, well, hang on. Like as I began talking to additional clients, like they said, well, can we use drones to do this, that, and the other thing? And after doing a lot more due diligence with those clients, I discovered that they just wanted to minimize their impact as well on the environment. So that's actually where things began kind of colliding. And that's ultimately where Sawback got going. So now we're a pretty purpose-driven company, just trying to use technology for the benefit of minimizing the footprint of industrialization.
So realistically, it came from a passion of wanting to play with things, your technological background, and the love of the environment and how you want to move forward. And I mean, that was some of our conversation before. Obviously, you're an avid hunter and fisherman. I haven't hunted in a long time, and my fishing skills have probably gone down to maybe once or twice a year when I'm at our lake. But that's interesting story that something that your passion is, the conservation side that really played a big part in starting your company.
Yeah, it's something that not a lot of folks I think spend enough time dealing with when they are thinking of a business, right? Like, what is actually going to get me up in the morning. So
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I love solving problems, but this is something that actually would have a definite impact on what I'm doing with my life. And what I mean by that is if, anything I can do to essentially help minimize the disruption. Because again, if you wander out into a forest and you see logging roads being cut through, it's a fact of life. Yeah, we completely acknowledge that. But what we also don't think of is what impact does this have on other stuff? And what I mean by that is when we have pipes that are being laid in the ground, how are we actually monitoring these pipes without being super invasive? Like, do we have to dig them up when there's a leak? And if we don't know there's a leak, how does this ever get rectified? Instead of leaving these issues or liabilities essentially for the next or subsequent generations. And that's ultimately, it's like, hey, actually, I think I can do something about this. And again, since I come from a pretty extensive technical background, it's like, well, hey, if I can solve something, or at least lend my talents to solving something, as well as actually reap the benefits in terms of making sure my kids have somewhere to recreate after when they're old enough. I think it's a win-win situation. That's actually what's kept me going for the past several years.
No, I love that. I love that story. I love the passion of saving, saving. You're out there, you're I guess not so much pushing bush, but you're in the hunting, you're getting back there. Again, I'm talking with Neil, the founder of Sawback Technologies. You click on their website in the comments section. And that kind of leads into my next question. When you talked about how invasive do we have to be digging it up? What do we have to do if there is a problem? Because there's going to be a problem. So please share how your technology works and maybe what differentiates yourself from some of your competitors.
Sure. So the first use case that we came up to is our clients wanted to actually identify where pipelines were buried. So after talking to them, it's like, well, how do you find us? How do you find them now? And why aren't we documenting them properly? So the answer that came back really quickly is that when pipelines were being installed, and this is actually as recent as yesterday type deal, when they get put onto documents, they don't often have accurate coordinates or locations mapped down, which I think is a bit of an issue. But again, this is just how things rolled out back in the day. So what what people have to do is actually have to physically go out and walk around the area in question, actually look for signs of a pipeline. They can't utilize that. Then there's a couple other technologies they can utilize, such as electromagnetic sensors. So that's basically, it's a big glorified metal detector. That has its own inherent issues. Specifically, it doesn't actually give you accurate locations. And more specifically, it doesn't tell you how far down an object is. The other technology that they utilize is something called ground penetrating radar, which is what I began doing a lot of investigation in. That tech's been around for about 100 or so years, and it's actually seen very little innovation. The way the technology is currently rolled out is you essentially have this big lawnmower type attachment, and you actually have to push it around onto the ground, which sounds awesome in theory until you recognize that when you're pushing something that's as big as that around on a farmer's field, the farmer tends to get a little upset, primarily because now you're disrupting their livelihood. So what we began doing is we recognized that there's a niche where we could actually take that same technology, make it light enough to actually put up onto a drone. And out of that, we discovered there's a whole bunch of other side sectors we can start addressing to this, because now we have this really innovative technology that can tell you how far down an object is, exactly where it is, and also tell you how big it is with extremely high precision, about plus minus 10 centimeters. And we can actually fly around on a drone and not leave a footprint on where any of these objects are.
And I mean, I could say obviously flying a drone is sure beats the GPR stuff that I see when you say that, pushing the lawnmower or doing it on Oak Island type thing, right? When I watch that show. But so how like on time wise, how quick compared to walking the system can the drone do it?
So that's the other fascinating things. Essentially, on a day-by-day basis, the person pushing around that lawnmower, they can basically do an area the size of a tennis court pretty accurately. On a drone, we can actually do upwards of a couple of square kilometers a day, because again, we're no longer bound by the limitations of having to push something around slowly. We go up on our drone, we basically start flying our grid patterns, and we can start doing square kilometers of coverage. So we're really cost efficient when we start talking about pipeline rights of way or big land developments. We can get that stuff done within a matter of weeks, essentially, versus months with the conventional method, because of that, just from the barriers. The other really notable thing that we discovered is that it actually, because of all this data that's coming out of both devices, whether it's conventional technology or our technology, it actually takes special technicians quite a while to chunk through all that data, because it's actually manual processing. It's literally taking pictures, and they have to annotate, physically annotate that, yes, this is actually what we think this is. That can take a matter of weeks. With our technology, with our solution, we've actually got it down to a matter of hours. So what we're finding now is that with our paid pilot projects that we are currently executing on, we can do a 1 kilometer pipeline right away. We can get that flown, and we can get the data all processed in a matter of a day and a half, which is obviously a significant savings to our oil and gas customers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's probably as real-time data as you can get it with GPR, I'm guessing. Like, I mean, hopefully you can get it to, maybe put it on a machine that's a little bit ahead, and you know what's coming up, maybe feet in front of you. But that's impressive.
Yeah, and that's actually something that we are aiming towards, is if we can get this down to near real time, it's a win-win. But right now, from our first generation, if you want to look at that, we're within hours of processing, which again is still a great leap forward than where the industry currently is.
And then, I mean, now you can just process that right on site, basically. Like,
yeah. So depending on the clients, some clients actually they don't necessarily care. All they're looking for is a go and no go. So when they're digging, they basically say green light, yep, go ahead, keep going. But if it's red light, then stop doing what you're doing. Then go and do a little bit more research. When we're talking to our surveying customers or energy customers, they're actually more than happy to basically upload it to the Sawback cloud, where we do the analytics, and then we can give them a nice pretty report to look at. So whether it be in say a Google Maps type format, or a little bit more advanced would be a point cloud. But as long as we can basically lower the barrier to entry for our technology, all of our clients win.
So thinking outside, there's got to be more clients other than in the oil and gas sector for this. Is there any others that you're trying to open up the doors in?
Yeah, what we took a pretty active decision that we're going to focus on energy and construction for the initial traction, just kind of establish our beachhead type deal, make sure that we can iron out the majority of their bugs, as well as the product itself, kind of get to a point where we can begin supporting our enterprise level clients. The other adjacent sectors that we've begun exploring is actually agriculture. So we've discovered that we can identify soil moisture content utilizing our technology, which is actually on a scale basis is pretty critical for farmers to make sound decisions. So we're going to start looking at that later on down the road. The other thing that we are looking for is utilities. So the utility sector, they have a major issue where there's leaks in water main pipes that they can't actually identify accurately. So what will happen is we lose a lot. Like, when I say a lot of water, it's roughly about 10% of the annual consumption on a nationwide basis. That's how much is lost every year, which generates a lot of GHG emissions to kind of make up for that, so on and so forth. So we're able to actually identify where those leaks are quite accurately, and basically allow utilities to be proactive in the maintenance of their utilities. And one final sector is actually the infrastructure. So when you think of roads, we can actually identify if there's voids that are developing underneath the roads without having to shut down roads themselves. So if anyone's ever done or driven past any construction sites where they've actually had to shut down a couple lanes because they saw a guy pushing a little lawnmower type device, we can actually get away from that and basically do it very cleanly and very quickly.
Oh, I like that. just fly a drone right down Country Hills Boulevard. Away you go, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Again, I'm talking with Neil, the founder of Sawback Technologies. Sawbacktech.ca is their website. Click on it in the comments section. One of the reasons I was so excited about talking to you is you've kind of run that gauntlet of the entrepreneurial journey, we'll call it. I talked to a lot of earlier stage companies, but you've done a lot of different things. So I'm really excited about what the next part that you're going to talk about, because you've done it. You've gone to an accelerator. You've done your early customer relationships. You've got your paid pilots. You've secured a lead investor. Again, you've got some investment through Startup TNT as well. So I know that's kind of one big question there, but what kind of talk about what benefited you I don't want to say the most, but how did each part of this help you out to get where you are today?
That's actually a really good question. So I talked a little bit at the beginning of how I'm a pretty strong technical guy, and that's just again, that's my background. Um, the I very quickly learned that I didn't know anything about business, how to basically go out and start a business and basically start laying that framework that we could ultimately be successful. So after a couple of months of kind of floundering, and basically I was doing kind of a loosey-goosey type market validation for what we were doing before we launched Sawback, I recognized that I need to get help. So I began looking around, and I ended up being fortunate enough to be put in contact with Platform Calgary. That was through a mutual friend, Kevin Dahl. So thanks, Kevin.
KD, gotta love KD, right? Good Sowski.
Fantastic gentleman, actually, great resource.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so you put me onto Platform Calgary. I went through their accelerator, and I'll be honest, it was actually the most beneficial thing I could have ever done, especially at the stage I was at, because they basically went through what I would call, here's the basically very rapid fire stepping blocks that you need to basically do to start building a business, whether it's going to be a startup that's going to go on to raise $1 bazillion, or be a unicorn, or even just be a service provider, or whatever, it's just a small lifestyle company. And I really appreciate that, because they basically told me what I didn't know, which is, again, was fantastic. That gave me the insight that I have to start basically proving out all the stuff that I didn't know. So I was able to take that Platform Calgary learnings. I went into Zone Startups Calgary, where again I was fortunate enough to work with a couple of really awesome executives in residence, and they were basically able to help kind of continue on with the Platform Calgary education process. After Zone Startups essentially had went away just for various reasons, I ended up joining the Next Canada Accelerator out in Toronto. I did that for a couple reasons. The biggest reason was to essentially, again, continue on with the educational, but the other one was actually to start building out my network out east. Because what I found very quickly is you can't really rely on being able to fundraise, or even for that matter, build out your customer network just in your backyard. You need to start looking elsewhere as well and start laying that framework. And it's better to do it sooner as opposed to later, instead of being in a panic for it. So I just wrapped up the Next Canada Accelerator. That was back in August, and out of that I was able to raise some funds, as well as establish a number of additional customers for our product, which would not have been possible if I had just stayed here in Western Canada.
No, and I love that. And then obviously out in Western Canada here, you started you went through the Startup TNT program. You went through it once, and then you went through it again, and yep. you got some funding. You met some more people out here. So talk about your TNT experience.
TNT was fantastic. It was a really good test, actually, of seeing how prepared I was. So the first go around was actually a year ago now. I clearly remember taking that phone call from Zach and I believe it was Neil, because I was out in the fields, and it was good, primarily because they began asking all the questions that I was prepped from the previous accelerators, knowing that this is what investors are looking for, and also acknowledging that maybe I wasn't quite ready at that time, just due to the stage of the product and whatnot, which is great. But what that gave me the tools to do is actually know what I had to aim for, which is why I was ultimately successful in my second go around with Startup TNT, because I was able to basically meet every checkbox, answer everything with confidence, and more importantly, actually show progress. So I think there's too many companies that essentially go stagnant if they're too fixated on one thing, and they forget about actually what they should be doing, which is moving their product development forward and being able to demonstrate the traction, being able to demonstrate improvements in their products and services. I think being able to show not so much success, but basically being able to show that you've moved things along the lines, I think that's the biggest thing from a number of investors, what they're looking for.
I couldn't agree more. And I love, and I mean, I'm going to touch base on a few things here. I love the Platform Junction program, right? And I always say it's business 101, business for dummies. And don't take that the wrong way, Platform, because I mean, I go buy Business for Dummies books or Crypto for Dummies. When I want it, I want that book. And I love that program, and I highly recommend everyone going through that program. and especially a specific accelerator that you're doing it. I had Jamie from Panorama on. She was in Houston for a sports specific accelerator that really helped her open up a ton of doors for potential clients. So obviously your Next Canada one did the same thing. But the most important thing that you said there was the takeaways that you got from Startup TNT is priceless. And that's something that I believe people don't focus on enough. Is you got to get your business right. You got to focus on moving forward. What's next? How am I going to get that next sale? How am I going to get that? And going back to more accelerators isn't going to help you do that. You got to spend time in your business, opening up doors, selling your products. So investors out there go, holy shit, yes, this is good. Look what he did. And now we're here, and now you're investable, and it opened up more doors for you, which is great.
Yeah, and I would touch on that as well. Going through countless accelerators is not going to help. You have to basically make sure you pick and choose what you do. And more importantly, and this is actually something that came right out of platform, specifically from Kevin Franco and David Yiptong, was you need to move the needle. So everything that you do needs to move the needle. So if you're going to join an accelerator, they'll maybe they want X number of percentage of equity out of you. Are they going to be able to move that needle? Like, is it justified? Or are you going to be better served to do something else, like get a strategic partnership by going with a client? Maybe that'll move the needle more substantially. That's something you have to make that decision. I think there's a real danger of people just going into these endless accelerators thinking it's going to open up all these doors, not recognizing that if you're going to do that, that actually detracts from what you should be doing, which is moving your business forward.
There's only so much time in the day, right? And especially as an entrepreneur, right? You got to have that. And people don't understand this. Yes, as an entrepreneur, it's already stressful enough. But, again, I'm going back to our conversation before. You talk about going hunting and fishing with your family and doing things. And you know what? Our family this weekend is we're just going to go stay in Banff for one night just to get out of town you have to be able to, judge your time, and spending it on more time on accelerators and growing your business is the wrong move. And I say this all the time, but you have to have that balance, and moving your business forward has got to be priority one. So that's great. And again, you don't want to give any equity away in any company that you don't have to. That's for sure. You need it all.
And to touch on that, actually, maintaining that life-work balance is important. Like, if you're a startup, you're obviously busy, and we can talk about that till the cows come home, obviously. But you need to make sure that you take time to basically reset yourself. So, I spend a lot of time in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm usually still attached, but oftentimes I'll actually make that active decision that I'll go into areas where there's no cell service, so I can actually focus on what I'm doing. I find that it helps with the mental reset, and then when I come back, I'm actually rejuvenated. I'm ready to get going on the business. But I need to build that time into my schedule. Otherwise, I'm a workaholic. I would just keep working all the time, and it's a hard lesson to learn. But you'll be better off for it if you take care of yourself.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, there's one takeaway from that. Any entrepreneur listening, obviously you have to be healthy yourself before your business is healthy. So that is something that we talk about. And actually the next sponsor coming up here is our mental wellness summit. That's going to be in December. We don't need to talk about that now, but the Community Now magazine puts it on, and I'll be talking about our story and a few other things, which is great. So what is next for you and Sawback?
Yeah, great question. So the funding that we've managed to raise so far, I've actually begun onboarding the people I need to actually start filling out all the roles. So it's both the technical as well as the operations perspective. I really want to basically have our product out doing our pilot testing right away in as many different scenarios as possible, and basically getting ready for our next raise, which we're starting to set up for next year.
Nice. Well, that's great. I mean, and that's important, right? Get to that next level, hit your milestones, so you can keep your company moving forward. I love it. I'm always sad when these conversations come to an end, and we could probably talk about the next 10 minutes about the fish hunting and fishing season here. But we'll we've talked about a lot of great things in this call already, especially looking after yourself and things like that. But again, I can't stress this enough to people that are listening. Neil has run the gauntlet here. He's been through a lot of different things. So if you had one piece of advice for a small business startup or entrepreneur, what would that be?
Don't be quiet. Ask. If you need help, ask. There's way too many. Again, I know way too many folks that are too shy or think that their idea is super proprietary and they don't want to talk to anyone about it. You can't shut up about it. And it's actually, again, that's a takeaway I got out of Platform. Talk about your idea, because invariably you're going to end up pivoting, because you'll find out something doesn't work. And you're only going to find out if you ask people about it, for both product validation as well as just what your business is all about. So just don't be quiet, ask. That's what the Calgary community is really good for. I shouldn't say Calgary, I should say the Alberta ecosystem is starting to really expand up. It's very collaborative at this point. You got to get on it.
I agree. I mean, I was talking to a gentleman last week, and he was like, well, I want you to sign an NDA before I share your idea. I said, actually, if you're doing that, I have no interest in hearing it all. Like, I'm not going to sign an NDA. So if you want to share it, have at her. I said, no one in this community here is going to steal your idea. But what you're going to get back is probably going to take your idea, which is going to be your starting point, and it's going to be over here by the time you listen to even 10 people. And it's going to be a much better idea by the time you talk to 10 people. So I totally agree with that, and I love that fact.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. Yeah, someone asked me to sign an NDA, I immediately lose interest, because if this is how you are now with just talking to someone, I can't imagine how you're going to be with an investor. And I'll tell you what, investors are way hardcore, way more hardcore than I am. So.
Yeah, an idea is not an NDA signable offense.
Absolutely.
Oh, Neil, I really appreciate you spending time with us today, sharing your story, and this is beneficial. I love it, and again, thank you to Bitvo for sponsoring us, and check them out, bitvo.com. Click on their website in the comments section. Again, click on Sawback Technologies website. If you have any questions, put them into the comment section, and Neil will be able to answer them. So again, thank you so much for spending half an hour with us today, Neil. I really appreciate it.
It's been awesome. Thanks, Jay. Look forward to the next meeting.
Absolutely. I hope everybody has a great week, and don't forget that the Startup TNT finale is November 18th. Their website is in the comment section as well, and the live event party after will be at Craft Beer Market. So hopefully we'll have some good things to celebrate next Thursday on the 18th.